Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of my Whipsnade Zoo recreation in Planet Zoo. In the last episode we did this building here, the base camp restaurant. Something a little bit different, as I said our last episode, doing a building with a bit more detailing than I would normally do, since it was the main focus of the whole build. So I didn't get a chance to do the aviary that was attached to it. And I also said that I wanted to maybe do something that was for an animal that we had in the game, since I've done a lot of the implied enclosures and things like that in the last few episodes. So I thought what I would do this week is do this enclosure behind here. So this is for Ostrich. It's not this whole bit here, this whole paddock was split more recently into two parts, where one side is to do with sewage treatment, that sort of thing, and then this side on the right here is the Ostrich enclosure, and then I would also try, if I can, to do the aviary as well, so that this little portion's finished off, because it was a shame I didn't get to do it last time, but as I said in the last episode, I wanted to do it right, so I didn't want to rush it and try and get it done in the same episode as the cafe, because I knew it would take a while to do that building. So yeah, I think that is what we'll focus on. So the aviary itself, there's quite a bit of planting and things in there. I've already put the outline of it in, but there is some posts to go in the kind of in the middle, and then obviously all the stuff on top. I'll try and do some sort of netting, probably with ropes, to mimic that. And then the house I started, but it needs a bit of finishing off. I'm not going to do it too detailed, just the sort of basic outline, and I've got a viewing window in there as well. There is a pool in there, in this sort of area here, with some gravel and bits around, so I might play about with the gravel path and see if I can make it work, but I'm not sure if it will look right. But yeah, I'll have a play around with that. There'll be a bit of perching and things in here, and some rock work as well, and then that'll be the main area done. This bit is the sort of keeper access airlock bit on the side of the building. So yeah, that will be that. The ostrich enclosure is quite basic, so that is why I've decided to kind of combine it with the aviary from the last episode, because it shouldn't take too long. The biggest thing here will probably be the terrain work, as it has been in a few previous ones. As you can see from over here, following the path of the road, the terrain slopes down to this kind of point here and then goes up again, and this is where the road curves around to the side, around and then goes down off that way. So on this side there is a ditch, and then this enclosure is even lower than the road itself. So yeah, terrain work's going to be a big bit, and it kind of slopes slightly down within the enclosure itself. So in terms of actual features, there's not a lot. There's a few small trees that have been planted quite recently, a little pool there in the middle, and a little shelter, and then there's a lot of planting all along this side here, actual big trees and things. So there is a standoff fence as well, so I'll do that. But yeah, that is pretty much it for that enclosure. So yeah, hopefully that won't actually take me too long, and then I can focus more of the detailing side on the aviary on this side. If I do get any more time, as I said, I'm going to try and get this portion in between the road and the enclosure done as well. There's a couple of other little areas that would be good to do as well, that are just kind of in between filler areas. So we've got this little portion here, which is just a bit of a sort of grassy patch, because there's a road that comes off this side as well, so it forms a little triangle of grass and some trees. So that will be quite a simple bit to do as long as the terrain's right. And then as I said in the last episode as well, this back area of the aviary and the restaurant, there's a lot of trees, benches, things, some pathways, and that sort of stuff. So yeah, that would tie that little bit in, finish that little portion off. I'll still probably focus on the toilet block and all the other bits in a later episode, because it'll probably take a bit longer to do all these bits. Will be quite fiddly. There's a little greenhouse in here, which is going to be quite small, quite fiddly probably. A few other little bits, so yeah, I'll see how I go time wise. So that is my plan, to get that done and this bit done. Hopefully it won't be too bad. I'll put some pictures in as always, and I will see when it's all finished. Okay guys, I'm back. So, as you can see, I have managed to get the ostrich done over to the left there, and the aviary is done, and a few of the little bits in between. I've also done a bit of layout stuff, so we'll start down, I think, with the aviary, continuing on from last week's episode with the cafe. So, this is the aviary for a few different types of birds, as I said earlier. I struggled a lot with this in terms of the scale and trying to get it to look as accurate as I could, but I think overall the outcome is not too bad. So quite a few different elements that I've had to make work for this enclosure that aren't really supposed to work like that. So one of the main things, as you can tell here, I have used the gravel path, and it was quite hard to get it in the right place because all this sort of area here is gravel in the actual enclosure itself. So I wanted to try and replicate that as well as I could, and I didn't think these stones were going to cut it, so I managed to get the gravel path working and in there, and fitting the right kind of sizes and things like that, which I was quite happy about. The only awkward thing was hiding the edges, so if you look from above you can see how straight the edges are and everything, which, I mean, it is realistic to an extent because there are sort of defined edges to the gravel with the grass, but it doesn't look like that obviously because it's so flat, the path. So I've kind of hidden the edges with a few of the rocks, a little bit of grass and some stones and things. So if you are down at that kind of level viewing the enclosure, you can't really tell that the edges are like that, so that's not too bad. I've used, for the outside part, obviously the path can't come through the fence, so I've used some of the temple rubble just for the sake of adding a bit of texture and stuff to it, and keeping that kind of theme going from the inside to the outside. The rocks and stuff, a few actual rocks and bits, and the pool was a bit tricky to do because, again, similar sort of thing for the otters and all the other pools and things that I've done recently. Just the way it all worked was a bit awkward. I also couldn't put the water in how I wanted to, so if I actually play it, I've used the special effects to give the impression that they are filled with water. I don't think it looks too bad. It could be worse, I think. I've used another technique which I'll show in a second, but if I'll pause it for now. So the house itself is all finished. So it's got this fake viewing window, which I've just done the grey art piece, I think it was, to replicate the window. A little entrance sort of area here with a airlock part in case any birds get past you when you try and go in, and then on the front of the building, or the inside should I say, there's just a couple of access doors. So quite a simple building with a concrete base. We've got this screening element at the back here, which I think these worked out quite nicely for. It's kind of willow screening, but I think this works pretty well. And there is a bit of fabricy stuff on this side, which annoyingly, this, when you go right up to it, when it's recoloured, it's patterned, but it's coloured both pieces exactly the same. And when you look at it like that, it looks fine, but when you look at an angle or from a distance, it's still got the pattern, which is a bit annoying, but because it's kind of hidden at the back there, I don't think it matters too much. Then we've got on this side, I'll go through all the bit up top in a second. So we've got planting all around, not tons of it, they've thinned it out quite recently, so it's a bit more open, a bit more room for flying and things, but still a decent amount of perching and stuff with the plants that are in there. And then down here a bit of actual perching, some tree trunks and bits. Now this is the bit that I was talking about earlier. So this was quite hard. I couldn't get it to have water in it, same with the other one, and I didn't really want to miss it out, and the water effect, I don't know, it didn't really feel right. So I've used, and I think I saw someone make a waterfall or something out of this before, but I've used the ice block pieces just to kind of give that impression of water. Obviously it doesn't move or anything, but it does have the reflection, which is nice with the light, and it's got the kind of colour. And then I've put some reeds and bits sticking out, which it does have in the actual aviary itself. So from this side you can see, from that viewing area, that is the view you get from there. At the front here, also just a continuation of that fence, that little rope fence, and I've kind of put the path in loosely. All this bit here, I decided to wait till I do that whole kind of area, so I'll do the toilet block and bits, because the terrain I need to make sure is correct as well, so I'll sort all that bit out because it slopes downwards, sort all that out in a later episode when I do the toilet block and other bits like that. So the roof. Now the roof, I've seen a few different techniques of making aviary roofs and things like that. I didn't want the piece count to be horrendous, and I didn't want it to look too thick as well. Like these, I didn't really want to use these pieces, or I think that kind of handrail-y looking piece, the New World piece, can't remember what it's called exactly, but that's quite short, so I probably would have had to use loads of them. And the rope pieces just, I don't know, they didn't look right to me. And the same with the African bead rope, or whatever it's called. It was just too sloped and it didn't have the right feel, so I decided to make it out of the fairy lights, the Arctic lights, string lights. I think it doesn't look too bad. I quite like that you kind of get the impression that there is something covering it, but you can't see it, because in real life that sort of netting effect, sometimes depending on the angle you're looking at it from, you can't actually tell that there is anything there. So I'm quite happy in that respect. I don't think they look too bad, the actual lights themselves. Other people might have other ideas, but I think it looks okay actually. Obviously I've made them all black lights so that in when it's dark, which I don't plan on having it dark much anyway, but when it's dark they won't all light up. But yeah, I think maybe the way they're arranged and stuff makes them not look as much like lights as they would if they're arranged all nicely and that sort of thing. So it took ages to get them all to line up, from the top of each post and around the building up to this, because everything's all at different angles and it was a nightmare. And then I decided to add this one sort of strip all around the edge, in the middle, just to give that impression of there being something, instead of just all these bits going outwards, something going across as well, so they are sort of in pieces and it is netting. So I think, yeah, that's the kind of view you get from the top. As I say, depending on the angle that you're at, you can see certain bits, because these pieces are so thin that they actually disappear when you're sort of underneath them or right next to them. So yeah, I'm quite happy with it. It took ages and I think it looks okay, so I'm quite happy with that. I think it's better than literally doing every single strand, or, you know, if I had to have put another 10 pieces in there going all the way down, I probably would have cried, and I don't think it was necessary. And I also think it, from the top there, you get a better view if you're just looking around. I know it doesn't really matter from the ground, but yeah, as I said, I do quite like that you can kind of sort of see it but not see it, so I like that effect. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. So yeah, I think everything there is done, so there'll be a little bit more to do on the side there, and then, as I said, all this stuff out the front of it here, but all the rest of it and the stuff on this side I think is done. I'll double check if there needs to be any more planting around here, which I think there might be actually in that standoff, which I forgot about, but I can add a little bit in there later. So moving on this way, so you can see the bits in between. So this little this triangle, I have just put those trees in, not a lot, but it helps tie that area in together, and when you look on Street View and stuff, it looks like that, which is nice. I've also put these little posts in. These are stock cars sort of cutting curbs and things, and these ones to stop the public going up this road. This is a staff only access road. The main car loop runs around here where our vet's walking. So the other bit I did was this patch. This, as you'll kind of see, this whole bit here was a lot of terrain work, which I said it was going to be, and it took ages to get it all as good as I could, and I decided to use some extra time that I had to do a bit more of like layout and stuff, so I'll show that after this. But this is the Ostrich enclosure. So we've had a few different things in here at different times, but currently it's home to Ostrich. So yeah, quite a basic enclosure, as I said. So there's a few of these kind of newly planted trees, which I have bothered to put little tree guards around, because they do have them on the trees that are there, and also because the enclosure is quite bare, I thought I might as well do a little bit of detailing like that. We've got a pond in there, and then a trough. So all the troughs in the game are kind of unrealistic, well, some of them are unrealistic. A lot of the troughs we have are just these deeper, big rectangular troughs. So this, I've put one of these in-game ones here floating, and then I've made the rest of it down underneath, so it gives the impression it's a deeper trough, because yeah, most of the troughs we have are quite deep. And then the house, which is up in this corner, is similar to all the other field shelters. It's not really a proper house, it's just a shelter that the animal can go in to get out of the elements and all that. So quite basic, using the bamboo pieces, which work well for that sort of thing. Planting wise, the trees was going to be it, so I decided to chuck in a few patches of longer grass and nettles just to make it a little bit more interesting, add a little bit more sort of depth to it, and stop it being as much, well, looking like an empty field. The annoying thing is that the way the grass renders and stuff, you can't actually see, kind of, if you're down on the public side, it just looks like there's nothing there, when actually it is all like this, and in real life you'd be able to kind of see a bit, obviously, the texture to it. The actual perimeter is all just chain link, and then we've got this wooden fence that's quite new, built in just around the front to stop people going right up to the fence, and the habitat gate in there, which works alright. That is where the actual gate is in real life, but obviously it's a bit too tall and everything. I might actually have to raise the fence, because I think I might have made it a little bit too short, but yeah, that is the ostrich enclosure. Quite basic again, as I said, but it does the job, and it looks, I think it looks pretty realistic. Yeah, this stuff at the side from the road here, as I said, all slopes down. This whole thing kind of slopes, and then it kind of evens out here, and yeah, it goes fairly straight. I think it does slightly go up, and this fence in the middle here never used to be here. It used to be one big paddock, and then they added in some other sewage work stuff in this bit, so this is the enclosure now. So I'll pause it again. So the rest of it, I decided to, because I was doing this and it needed a lot of terrain work anyway, I thought I'll kind of do a bit more of the actual area itself, do a little bit more mapping out and things, just to kind of get myself ahead a little bit for when it comes to doing this area. As always, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I thought I would at least help myself prep a little bit. So down here on this side, since I was doing that enclosure, I tried to get a little bit of the train sorted for where that goes. I'm probably not going to do the actual train, all that stuff, until a bit later on, but I wanted to kind of get the right proportions and all that sort of thing, so how far away fences are to the track and everything, and the terrain itself. And then on this bit is where the sewage works and stuff is, so I haven't finished all that. And then down this way we move on to like the cranes and the sloth bears. This is a continuation of where the track goes for the train. And then this bit, which is what we call the Asia loop, so this is where a lot of the Asian animals are in the zoo. So I've mapped out the road itself, and a couple of access points. This is where the drive-through bit comes out, which is where that bit is, where that starts, goes round, and then comes out here. And then this is just an access road to the camels. I've also done the yak fence line as well, mapped out in a different way that I normally do. I normally use the sort of wood pieces and measure stuff out, but I just use Google Maps overlaid to Planet Zoo, so it should hopefully work out right. So that's the fence line, the brown. Down here is where the Asian rhinos are, and then up here, this is where I started mapping out the yak. This bit here is the tigers, so that's going to be quite hard. There's a lot of terrain, there's waterfalls, bridges, all sorts of stuff, so that's going to be a challenge. But yeah, I think terrain wise I've also sloped that down, so everything to there is all sloped, and it should be kind of accurate terrain wise. The rest of it is just mapped out but not terrain done. I've also done a little bit on this side, so mapped out all the sand is where the roads are. That's an access road that goes down the middle of the zoo, and this is where the main road loop comes. And I think I'm going to come short and miss off where I wanted to be to get the whole loop in, which is annoying, but there's no way I can change it now because everything is all laid out. So I'm going to have to deal with it, so I'll just have to let it come back in at some point. and then the brown, the soil, is the railway. So this is where the railway station is, the actual train station. So that will be another big chunk that maybe will be combined with this whole area here, the train station and the track going up there, and the toilet block and all that. So yeah, that is what I've been busy doing. It takes a long time, all this mapping out, so I did want to get it a little bit more done, because as I keep saying, I've got certain bits done, but there's still loads more to do, and it just gives me more options for future episodes. If I decide that I don't want to go over and do the crane enclosure, which I do every week, then I can go and do something else because it's already mapped. But yeah, not sure what I will do next, but I'm sure I will decide fairly quickly and get started on it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Fairly short and cheerful. That's not the phrase. The more complex and the more basic, but I think both bits are valid enough. Obviously it's a recreation anyway, so I'm doing what I have to do to make it look like the zoo itself, but I think it's good to have some more basic enclosures, more practical, more realistic, and some more in-depth, intricate, detailed, and that sort of thing. So all these different elements make up a realistic zoo. So yeah, it's all interesting, and they all have their own challenges to make within the game. That one loads of terrain, that one loads of detail but tiny. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already to see the future episodes. If you have any thoughts or suggestions on this episode or future episodes, please leave a comment, and thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.